Hello and welcome to Strength Unlimited. I'm Sarah, and tonight I have two special guests with me. I have Quentin Price and Chance Cooley. Quentin Price has been weightlifting for the last 5 years or so and has a passion for the fitness industry. And Chance Cooley is a strength and conditioning coach with a master's in kinesiology. Thank you for being here, guys.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
So before we get to the videos, I've got some questions I'd like to ask you guys so we can have a little discussion beforehand. So I'd like to know how each of you got into strength training. So Quentin, if you'd like to answer that question.
For me, I would say it was when I watched my first strongman competition, and I just fell in love with it from there. And I just fell in love more with the strength side, not the bodybuilding, but the size, the power. That's what got me into it.
Okay, Chance?
I was a weak 7th grader. I could hardly lift the bar. I was really weak. I got pinned all the time in wrestling, so I decided I need to make a change. And weightlifting was that change, and from that moment on, I was hooked.
All right. I'm not sure. So, are there different kinds of weight training? Are there different styles of weight training? I guess. Either of you can answer this one.
Yeah, without a doubt. There's powerlifting, which is the squat, the deadlift, and the bench press, and that's more geared towards strength. There's obviously good old bodybuilding, and that's more towards aesthetics, looking good, six-pack abs, big biceps. There's Olympic weightlifting with the clean and jerk and the snatch, and that's more towards power, quick movement. And then,
there's strongman, that's more all-around strength.
Touche. The Olympic, and CrossFit, obviously, a big one that's just become really popular these days, and that's kind of a blend of everything.
Speaking of CrossFit, I'm going to throw this one in there. Do you guys think that one's going to stick around? Is that one more of a fad? I
think it's more of a fad.
Being a part of this, this field, the fitness field, I've studied CrossFit quite a bit, and I have to say that, while it's controversial, I think if they get some people in there that actually get some good coaching, get some good coaching throughout the nation instead of, the coaching that they have now, it may last, but I don't think it's going to be as popular as it's been right now.
Okay. And this one is for you specifically, Chance. How did you choose strength as your specialty?
Strength is my specialty. It's the unknown that comes with strength training. This is kind of cliche, but every time I walk up to the bar, I don't know what's going to happen, and it's kind of a metaphor for life, and it just motivates me. It's my home away from home. It's a place that I can go to get escape reality and just focus on, hey, I got to lift this weight, and it's challenging. Aesthetics, all that other stuff's fun, great, but it's the challenge of strength training that kind of got me involved.
All right. And so this one is for you, Quentin. How long have you been training for power or strength? Did you start just for size, or?
I would say I have been training specifically for strength for about 3 years, but lifting weights for about 5 years. The first couple of years I was just doing what I could see in the mirror. That was obviously not the right thing to do.
Do you consider yourself a power lifter?
No, I do not compete.
Okay, so
I'm just in love with the weight training, getting stronger, bettering myself. So no, I do not.
Okay. Is there a difference in training for strength and training for size, or would you train the same if you were trying to be strong and, I guess, for aesthetics?
Well, I guess if you're Mike O'Hearn, you can do both.
Yeah.
Not all of us are blessed with those type of genetics. I think that if you want to maximize, size, you need to focus on size. If you want to maximize strength, you need to focus on strength. It's the SET principle, specific adaptation and imposed demands. If you want to get strong, you focus on that. If you want to get size, you focus on that. And you can get a blend of both, but I don't think you're going to get the results that you want if you focus on both.
So what's the difference in training if you were training for size as opposed to training specifically for strength?
For strength, it's more lower repetitions. It's recruiting a lot of your muscle, while training for size is typically higher repetition ranges, like the mid 8 to 12 repetitions, minimum rest. That would be more how you would structure your training for hypertrophy or size.
Okay. And this one's kind of an opinion question for both of you. Do you think there are lifts that are better for building strength than others?
Oh, yes.
And if so, what are the specific ones that you think are
I would say definitely the big four, your deadlifts, your squats, your bench presses, your standing overhead press, not the seated one. Anything that involves, you standing will involve more of your core and force you to utilize just more muscle.
I can completely agree. Typically people come in and they'll do all these like single joint movements, movements that only involve one muscle group. Like they'll do the bicep curls, tricep press downs, and they're expecting to get strong, but our bodies are not built that way. We don't get strong by we're not puzzles. We're not little pieces. We're actually the puzzle itself. We're not the little pieces. We're the puzzle. We work together. We work in an integrated fashion. Our upper bodies, we have multiple joints that are functioning, and so yeah, like he said, if you want to get strong, you have to maximize that, and you maximize that by utilizing lifts that incorporate a lot of muscle, not just isolating one. So yeah, I totally agree with that. Those lifts are probably the premier when it comes to building strength.
Okay.
I would say that, and the Olympic moves also.
Yeah, Olympic moves, and something I like to say on that though, and this is a discussion I've had with a lot of people. Those big four are great, and those should be your first stop, but you should also modify accordingly to where your body is at. Like if you have range of motion difficulties, you say your shoulders are tight, your hips are tight, you may think about incorporating other movements. You may want to alter your big four. You may, instead of doing a back squat, you may have to do a goblet squat, a rear elevated, where your foot is up and you're squatting with one leg, because everybody has different range of motion limitations, or even their bodies may limit them and not allow them to do those movements. So try to design your program with movements that cater to you and your body.
Okay. And then I've got one last question before we go to the videos. How do you guys feel about supplements?
I would say they definitely help, but nothing's magic. You have to put in the work. You can't just take a pill or a powder and sit around and hope for the best. And you have to do your research too on those things. You have to be sure, oh hey, I want to take this. What does this have in it? Yep. Is this going to help me with my specific goals?
Totally agree. I just got done with my graduate level nutrition class, and we looked into supplements, and a lot of the supplements out there don't have a lot of research, scientific research to back the claims that they're making. So yeah, you have to do your research. You have to investigate these supplements, and you just can't trust supplements in general, even if they are even like, for example, citrulline malate has quite a bit of research behind it, but it's not regulated. Supplements are not regulated by the FDA. So you may think you're getting citrulline malate, but who knows? You may be getting some powdered sugar. So you just have to be skeptic. You have to constantly be skeptic, and yeah, like you said, put in the work. You're just not going to take something, you're all of a sudden going to just be, He-Man. You're going to have to work towards it.
Right.
Exactly.
And kind of along the same lines, how do you feel about the recent ban on pro-hormones and pro-hormone and steroid use in general?
I would say it's a man's choice to use those. Say if you're
Man
a
or
top
woman.
man or woman.
Touche.
Let's be politically correct.
It's that athlete. It's not for some high school kid. It's for that athlete looking to get to the next level. And let's be honest. Steroids are rampant in sports.
I think it all comes down to your morals. Like you said, it's your decision to make. Obviously we know that steroids are rampant. Baseball players, track athletes, you name it. Everybody's getting caught with them. Lance Armstrong. But it's your morals. It's your philosophy on it. It's what you believe is right. And and there's risks involved. Obviously the risks I think are a little bit overblown. But if you want to do it and you think that it's going to benefit you, and it's something that, and you've calculated the risk, by all means. But just don't go into it blind. Don't just go into it like, hey, I'm going to start injecting and not know that, hey, there could be some consequences to this. And just like with supplements, if you're going to take those, you better be educated in the matter and know that they are illegal.
And more is not necessarily better. That just equals more side effects. Same with supplement use.
Right, absolutely.
I'm not putting those two things on the same level, but more is not better.
Right. Okay, so I've been training for about a year plus, so I know that I still have a lot of questions. And fortunately, I'm able to train with both of you on a pretty regular basis. And so you were both gracious enough to let me come and film you. So in a second here, I want to watch that video, and then we can explain what the lifts are, because some of them are not quite as popular as some of the other ones, more unknown ones. So watch the video and then explain what's going on. And so we're just going to end up talking over the video. So if we could get that video clip. All right, so what is this first clip that we're watching here?
This is myself doing a close grip pause bench press. And this is my first working set, I believe. And this is just me getting set up. And Chance, you want to take us through the setup?
Yeah. The common thing that you see in bench pressing is there's not a lot of time spent in this setup. I think the setup is the most important part of a bench press. You want to get tight. The analogy is, you're not going to be able to shoot a cannon out of a canoe. You got to get tight. If you're going to lift that weight, you got to make sure that you're retracting your shoulder blades, you're pressing your feet into the ground, you're engaging your abs. See, as Quentin presses, his body's completely rigid. He's just not wrangling around on the bench, which typically a lot of people do, and they're missing out on the amount of weight that they could lift if they would just actually get tight and take their time on their setup.
Okay, so let me ask, what's the difference between the regular conventional bench press and the close grip bench press?
Close grip bench press shifts more of the emphasis to the triceps. But your chest is still getting engaged, and obviously the bench press is shifting it more towards the chest itself.
Okay, so it's just a closer grip then?
Correct, and we're not talking about breaking your wrist kind of close. Mm-hmm. I would say, what do you say, shoulder width?
Yeah, about shoulder width. You see, I actually always lift with a close grip bench press because of the previous shoulder injuries that I have. So I'm not very wide at all. Okay. I'm always narrow, and that's just something that I've done for my, to keep my shoulders healthy.
Right.
Yeah, and it's moving your hands in, and it puts emphasis more on the shoulders and the triceps, more so than the chest.
I'd say the important thing is tucking those elbows too on the close grip.
Yep.
I mean, you can have your hands as close as you want, but if those elbows start to flare, then that's no good.
No, when you flare your elbow, you're putting your shoulder at risk. You want to have about a 45-degree relationship with your torso. If not, you start to roll forward like this, you're putting a tremendous amount of stress on the shoulders. So keep those elbows at about a 40, as you can see, he's about a 45-degree angle, and keep that forearm vertical. Keep your wrist in line with your elbow. Too many people let those forearms come too far back or too far forward. Your bench press is a little bit more complicated than people give it credit for. There's actually a lot that goes into it, and it's proper execution.
Okay, what are the advantages of the pause on the bench press?
I say the advantage of the pause, for myself, it's taught me how to stay tight in the bottom, how not to lose my position and my tightness in the bench press, and being able to drive off my chest, not having all that elastic energy, and because our muscles kind of work like rubber bands where they stretch and they shorten, and not getting as much as that help from that mechanism, and just really having to explode off my chest and just generate a lot of power. It's really benefited me in my bench press.
Same with me. Ever since I switched to utilizing a pause, my strength has really taken off. So I think I'm going to stick with it.
So would that be one of the advantages to incorporating it then, is it just adds strength in the...
Yeah, being able to drive off your chest. Like a lot of people, that's where they're weak is... I'm shaking. Being able to drive off the chest, that's where we're at our weakest, is that point where we're driving off the chest. So by learning how to stay tight there and not being loosey-goosey, you're able to actually generate the power that your body is capable of. If not, you're going to miss out and you're going to be too weak in that bottom position.
All right, so in this last little part here, I saw you using the Slingshot. Do you want to kind of explain what the Slingshot is and what the purpose is? I don't really know a lot of people that know what the Slingshot is and what it's for.
So I got to give credit to Mark Bell. He's the inventor. And it's an assistive device. It allows you to lift a little bit more weight, to overload the bench press, and it also helps you where you're weakest. Like I said, that's off the chest. That's where the delt is probably most engaged, and that's one of the smaller muscle groups. So it gives you a little assistance off the chest and allows you to overload with a little bit heavier weight, get your body acclimated to those heavier weights. And what it's done for me by, exposing myself to those high weights, I've been able to increase my strength dramatically on the bench press. Yeah, actually just recently, I went from, I hadn't trained the bench press for a while. I had some shoulder problems. I went from 210 all the way up to 240 just by utilizing the Slingshot in a matter of 4 weeks.
It's a huge increase. And I know that I don't have video of you using it, but I know you have the Slingshot, a different version, but the Slingshot as well.
Yeah, it's really helped me just overload my lockout. That's where I tend to fail bench presses at the top. And then it just teaches good mechanics. I mean, it teaches you to get those shoulders back, tuck those arms.
Exactly. So it really reinforces that. That's something that I've noticed. Even when I get really, really heavy, I used to have the tendency to flare my elbows out, roll my shoulder forward, really put a lot of stress on my shoulder. But when I've been using this consistently, the Slingshot consistently, I'll find that even when I get really heavy, my elbows will stay tight. I won't flare. So it's really imprinted good mechanics. As far as my bench press is concerned. And just a phenomenal, and it takes the stress out of my shoulders actually feel better because this is where they're stressed the most, is that initial part. And then when it gives you assistance in that area, my shoulders feel great. And so I'm able to bench press more often with increased frequency and not have the detrimental side effects of that. And and my shoulders are not beat up. I actually, in fact, I bench pressed 7 days in a row. And I was able to get through that, and I credit that to the Slingshot and the stress that it took off my shoulders.
Okay, so speaking a little bit about the benching 7 days in a row, I know that you've created a program. I don't remember the name of it now because you changed the name of it on me.
So I had a catchy name. First name I had was like clip hanging for strength, but that was a little too trying to get a name out there. So I changed it to kind of a more of a scientific name, planned systematic overreaching, or PSO for short. And I worked with my exercise physiology professor, and we worked on it. It was just a program for the advanced athlete to gain strength in a short period of time. So it's based off of overreaching, and it's not overtraining, where overtraining is where your body pretty much plateaus. You're no longer able to increase strength. What you do is you push your limits. You actually push past your limits of what your body is capable of. Almost get to the point where you overtrain, where you completely just shut down your body. So that's why I called it cliff hanging. You're kind of walking on that edge there. And you get to that point, but you actually come back, and it's organized to where you get that recovery, you get that rest. And yeah, it calls for 7 days in a row of a movement, 5 days in a row, 4 days in a row, and then 3 days in a row. And every time I've utilized this program, I've improved every movement I've improved by at least 10, 15 pounds at minimum in 4 weeks. So, and I consider myself to be a pretty decent bench presser, pretty decent squatter, decent deadlifter, and every time I've utilized it with those movements, I've seen an increase.
Okay, and I know that you've been doing.
I have been the guinea pig on this program. I'd say it has worked wonders ever since I started working with Chance. I mean, I had a horrible back injury, I want to say, in the summer of 2013 that shot my deadlift down from 615 down to 365. I mean, I couldn't pick up 365 pounds without there being excruciating pain. But through working with him, and using his methods, mine is back up to a 600-pound raw, no straps, no belt deadlift. It's not the best, but it's better. I mean, it's improving. I didn't think I'd ever get back there, but with his system, I'm on my way.
All right, and I know that I'm a novice, obviously, but I did the one for bench, and mine went up like 10 pounds in a matter of, what did you do, 4 weeks? So yeah, that's definitely something to look into.
You were also utilizing a pause too, and that's a huge jump.
That's correct.
10 pounds on a pause.
Yeah, makes it much harder, without a doubt.
So the next video that we've got is overhead press, and that's another one that's not really widely seen. But we're going to go ahead and explain that one as well during the clip. Okay, so if you want to go ahead and explain.
This is just me. I believe this is one of my warm-up sets, and I can't. Is that 185 Chance? Is that my first? Yeah. I think it's my first working set. This is this is on his program. This is the technical mastery part, using 70% of my 1 rep max. Just teach me to get tight and yeah. Okay, so how important is the setup on this one as well?
It's just as important as it is with the bench press. You really got to get tight. Your abdominals. You got to really engage your abs, engage your glutes. Make sure. And I have a specific way I go about overhead pressing. I have a little bit of a layback, which is not encouraged by everybody, but. Yeah, it's just as important. You got to get tight. If you're not tight, you're not going to be as strong as you could possibly be, without a doubt.
And this movement isn't to be confused with the push press. We're not using our legs in this at all. This is just us pressing just raw
pure
overhead.
Upper body.
Okay, so like I said, this one isn't a very common lift. So what muscles does that one specifically target?
So it targets the front of the shoulder and the back of the arm, or the tricep. Are the two and also it integrates your entire body. Your abdominals are going to be integrated.
Your
all the
traps
muscles
help with the lockout.
Traps. Pretty much every muscle in your body is being utilized in this movement. So it's just a phenomenal movement. It fell out of, I guess I'll say, grace, because it used to be a part of the Olympics, but it was so hard to judge that they actually removed it from the Olympics. And that's when bench press came onto the scene, and everybody loves the bench now. Overhead press is kind of under the radar.
This is a true test of upper body strength.
I would agree.
I mean, when I first switched from the seated over to this, I'd say it easily cut my weight down 80 pounds.
You know, it was common back in the day for an individual to be able to lift their body weight overhead, but nowadays it's like a unicorn. You hear about it, but yeah, you never see it. It's like it's mythical almost.
All right, so in the last little bit, actually in this one as well, I see you guys utilizing the belt. So what does the belt help with, and do you always use it?
Myself, I don't during this lift.
In general, I guess.
I use it during the overhead press and any kind of squatting movements. I do not utilize it on the deadlift, and on the deadlift that's just personal preference because I can't suck in enough air.
I use the belt a lot, and what I found for myself is it just allows me to really engage my abs, protect my low back, get my body tight. I'm not loose. I'm engaged, and my back feels better when I wear a belt. And yeah, I probably overuse it. You know, I think there's a lot of research. It's kind of conflicting, but some people say it's better to not use a belt. Others say it helps you engage more. I've found in my experiences that it just helps me engage a little. I use it on pretty much everything, just to have something externally, you know, on my stomach that I can really contract against and really get tight.
Okay. The next little video I've got a couple actually all shoved together. The next one I've got is the hammer strength. It's one of the machines, so I'll have you explain why you chose to use the machine as opposed to free weights on the next clip here.
And basically, the reason I chose to use this on this day, my hand was just giving me a little problem, so I wanted to stay safe. And usually at this point, after the overhead pressing, I'd go on to dumbbells just to hit some more stabilization. But I thought this would be a safer route just for today.
Okay, so instead of the machine, like what other options are there if you don't want to use the shoulder press for some reason?
There's quite a few different options. You know, like Quentin said with him, his hand was bothering him a little bit, so he decided to utilize that. I mean, there's kettlebells, there's bands, there's so many forms of resistance that you always have an option. You know, if something's bothering you, experiment with it. Like I know, I worked with a gal that she could not do a kettlebell, she couldn't do a dumbbell, she couldn't do that hammer strength. It would bother her shoulder. Then we just had her do some banded resistance, and that resistance worked for her. I can't explain why, but it's just experimenting with those different forms of resistance. And if you have a problem, work around it. Find something that's gonna work for you.
And that's the beautiful thing about weight training. I mean, things can be modified, like you were saying, to fit the individual. You know, to work around issues you may have.
You don't have to be so strict. You can freestyle a little bit.
Okay. Okay, so the next video that we've got is another. It's a little bit less common. It's a bicep curl, but it's the strict curl that you've done. So when I get that clip up, we'll explain the difference. I'll have you explain the difference between a regular bicep curl and the strict curl.
So I really like the strict curl, mainly because it really, really isolates the biceps. When you're not against the wall, you have the tendency to use, your hips, use momentum, you name it. So I like to go against the wall. I like how loadable it is. I like to go really heavy on them. A lot of people don't do that, but I found when I go really heavy that it adds a lot of mass to my biceps. Like I did that PSO program that I was talking to you about with the strict curl, and I actually added about an inch or so to my biceps just by utilizing the strict curl and utilizing it like frequently.
Okay.
Great movement.
So it just restricts the amount of movement of your arms.
Yeah, the amount of not necessarily the movement, but the amount of movement of your body. Like of the body English of your body. It allows you to stay tight and really, really isolate the biceps and not get as much involvement from the other parts of the body.
And what I was going to add, Chance, you weigh in about 160, and that curl was 110. I mean, do you know anyone? I can't curl within 50 pounds of my body weight, and I can't overhead press within 25 pounds of my body weight.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. And that's another point that I wanted to make, at least about strength training in general. It's not about necessarily being the biggest person. Like, you know, you're not a huge guy, but you have a ridiculous amount of strength for your size. So
it's all relative.
It is all relative.
You have to have your own individual goals, and you know, strength's one of them, aesthetics is one of them. You just focus on yourself, not everybody else.
Which is really hard when you're in the gym sometimes. So.
Amen.
Okay, and I think the last little part of the video actually is just the stretches, but I talk a little bit about the importance of stretching and the importance of the different kinds of stretches.
I myself.
Oh, I take it back. There's one before stretches.
This is just me doing some face pulls. You know, it's
okay. We can just let it roll
healthy shoulders,
too, so.
Good rear delts. Just something extra I threw in at the end. And I believe I also did a superset with just some tricep rope push downs and just you know, a little bodybuilder coming out at me and wanting to get a pump on.
Okay. And then after that should be the stretches. I just forgot it in my little note to myself. But yeah, so in a second here when we get the video back up, we'll talk a little bit about stretches and when it's appropriate to stretch. So let me ask really quick what this one is doing.
So this
what are you stretching here?
This stretch right here is really hitting the hip flexors. It's typically you have see how I'm holding his foot. Mm-hmm. Typically that's done against a wall or something in that nature. It's called the couch stretch. Mm-hmm. It's popularized by Kelly Starrett, and probably other physical therapists who are aware of it. But he's really been instrumental in exposing it to a lot of people. I know I've seen athletes utilize it. I've seen it's starting to really spread throughout the fitness community. Great stretch. I mean, it just really hits those hip flexors, really opens up these muscles on the front of the thighs, because then those tend to get really matted down and tight, and that is probably one of the best stretches out there. The other one, great for the hip capsule. Pulls that femur down a little bit and allows for a little bit more movement there of the femur, which is not so up into the the bone itself, the hip itself.
So how important is stretching and mobility to the entire workout?
Extremely important. I'd say that was my Achilles heel before I started working with Chance. Was like I said, I had that lower back injury. It was on my right side, and I just noticed everything here was just really tight, be it my glute, hamstring, my hip. And ever since I started working with him and doing more mobility work, it's gotten a lot better.
Mobility work is everything. I used to be an individual who didn't believe in stretching. I was just like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to get my workout in. I'm going to throw some weight on the bar and I'm going to go. But reading through the Supple Leopard, a book by Kelly Starrett, and how he talked about mobility being so important, and then I really adopted his methodologies, and I tell you what, like Quentin said, it improved him, but it improved me as well. It improved my ability to get into a good position, a good safe position. My hamstrings weren't as tight, my shoulders weren't as tight, so I could actually bench press and do certain movements without pain that caused me a lot of pain before I really started working on mobility. It's everything. And I think a lot of people underestimate how important it is, and I think that they should really reconsider that and try to increase the amount of mobility work that they do.
Okay, and I know you've told me before how important rolling is, but what does the foam roller actually do? Because I personally hate it, but he foam rolls on there, so I'm curious what's the...
There's a lot of different views on foam rolling. Some people think it's completely useless. Others, it's almost revered by other people. The verdict's not really out on what it does exactly, the kind of mechanisms behind it, but from what I've been told, over your muscle you have these layers of tissue and they tend to get kind of binded up, and what foam rolling does is it realigns those tissues in how they should be aligned and how they are normally. When they get kind of matted down, meshed up, it kind of promotes optimal alignment of those tissues that surround the muscle, as from what I've been told, but I don't know if that's definitive as of yet.
Okay. And then with stretching, should you stretch before or after, or both? I
think that certain, like the banded work I do before and after, but the foam rolling I just do after. I think, foam rolling before just sends a wrong message to your body. I mean, you're trying to wake it up, you're trying to get ready for that workout. That's what my take is on it anyway.
I think it's all dependent on, the research says dynamic stretching, so doing like body weight squats, different things before workouts, and that's what the research says, and then after it says static stretching. I think it's really dependent on the person. I used to follow that rigidly, but I found that I need a little bit of the stretching of the mobility work before to allow myself to get into those positions, to get in, to be able to bench press without pain, to be able to squat with depth without pain. I have to stretch before. So I think it's dependent on the person. Safe bet is, do something like Quentin said, wake your body up. Do something that's going to prepare you for what you're doing. If you're going to move dynamically, you should do something, sometime a dynamic stretch before. If you're going to do something static, obviously static stretching would probably be a better bet. But the general recommendation, dynamic before, static after.
Okay. So, but you also said it just depends on
and I think it depends. I think you should allow for a little bit of experimentation there. I personally have to do a little bit of the static stretching, or I just cannot get into the right positions. I can't get the bar all the way down to my chest without a little bit of tightness, a little bit of pain. So I stretch my shoulders before I bench press, and I feel great. I have absolutely no problem. I just have to be careful that I don't overdo it, because if you overdo it, then you decrease the amount of weight that you can lift. So you can't do too much, or it can be detrimental.
Okay. Well, that's about all we've got for tonight, but I want to thank both of you for being on the show. I really, really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, and if you have anything else you want to add?
I think that covers
Everything's awesome. Flex down? No.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you for joining us, and we will see you guys next time.